date is March 31st, 1985. The crowd at Madison Square Garden in New York City is a sea of excitement, anticipation, and patriotic fervor. This is WrestleMania 1, the inaugural event of what will become the most celebrated spectacle in professional wrestling. The arena is filled with over 19,000 passionate fans, and millions more are watching on closed-circuit television. The air is thick with tension as the match for the Tag Team Championship is about to begin. The challengers, the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkoff, make their way to the ring, but this is no ordinary entrance. It is a statement, a provocation, a calculated act of defiance against the American audience. Nikolai Volkoff, with his towering frame and stern demeanor, proudly waves the flag of the Soviet Union. The Iron Sheik, adorned in his signature boots, curled at the toes, and brandishing his dreaded Persian clubs, strides purposefully toward the ring. Here he is at the peak of his powers, a man who had become the perfect foil for the rising tide of American exceptionalism that Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Federation is riding to unprecedented heights. The Iron Sheik was not just a wrestler, he was a cultural touchstone, a character so effective in his villainy that he helped propel professional wrestling from smoky local arenas into the mainstream consciousness. The sight of the Soviet and Iranian flags, symbols of America's greatest geopolitical adversaries, sends a ripple of anger through the crowd. But it is what comes next that turns that ripple into a tidal wave of boos and jeers. Volkoff, with a deep and deliberate voice, begins to sing the Soviet national anthem. He demands that the crowd remain silent and show respect. The reaction is immediate and deafening. Thousands of voices unite in a chorus of boos, expressing their disdain for the audacity of these two men. As the anthem concludes, the Iron Sheik seizes the microphone. His eyes gleam with malice as he delivers his infamous catchphrase,
Russia, number one! Iran, number one! USA,
The crowd erupts in a fury of boos, their patriotic pride wounded by this blatant insult. But this reaction is precisely what the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkoff are after. They are villains in the truest sense, and in this role, they are on top of their game. As the match unfolds, the Iron Sheik and Volkoff demonstrate their brutal, no-nonsense style of wrestling, a stark contrast to the athletic, high-energy approach of their opponents, the US Express. Every blow, every hold, every taunt is designed to infuriate the crowd and draw them deeper into the drama unfolding before them. As the referee is distracted, the Iron Sheik grabs Freddie Blassie's cane and strikes Barry Windham from behind. The blow is enough to incapacitate him, and Volkoff capitalizes on the moment, pinning Windham to the mat for the 3 count. The bell rings and the crowd erupts, not in cheers, but in a collective outcry of outrage and disbelief. The Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkoff are the new tag team champions, and in that moment, they solidify their status as two of the most reviled and effective villains in professional wrestling. As the Iron Sheik emerges victorious in this historic match, the shadows of his past and future loom large. The highs of championship glory and the lows of personal demons waiting to be unleashed create a narrative as gripping as any submission hold. For in just a few short years, the man who stood tall as one of wrestling's most effective heels would find himself brought low by the scourge of drug addiction. Cocaine, the substance that fueled so many of the excesses of the 1980s, would prove to be the Iron Sheik's most formidable opponent. It was a battle that would cost him his career, his reputation, and very nearly his life. But to understand the fall, we must first understand the rise. To comprehend the impact of the Iron Sheik on professional wrestling and popular culture, we need to journey back to where it all began, in a small village in Iran, where a young Hossein Khosrow Ali Vaziri first dreamed of grappling glory. Born on March 15, 1942, in the city of Damghan, Iran, Vaziri was raised under austere circumstances, his childhood marked by financial hardship and a lack of basic amenities, like running water. Yet his early life was still steeped in the rich traditions of Persian culture and athleticism. From a young age, he showed a natural aptitude for wrestling, with its emphasis on strength, technique, and honor, and this led to him being recognized as a formidable amateur wrestler. He then leveraged his physical prowess to secure a position as a bodyguard for Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi and the royal family, a role he maintained for several years. Vaziri eventually earned a spot on the country's Greco-Roman wrestling team for the 1968 Summer Olympics in Mexico City. While he didn't medal at the Olympics, the experience opened his eyes to the world beyond Iran's borders. In 1969, he made the life-altering decision to emigrate to the United States, settling in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a hotbed of professional wrestling at the time. Vaziri's wrestling background and imposing physique soon caught the attention of Vern Ghani, the promoter of the American Wrestling Association. Ghani saw potential in the Iranian immigrant and took him under his wing. Yet Vaziri's transition from amateur to professional wrestling was not without its challenges. The theatrical nature of the sport, with its predetermined outcomes and larger-than-life characters, was a far cry from the pure athletic competition he was accustomed to. Before long, he began incorporating elements of his Persian heritage into his wrestling persona, wearing traditional Iranian clothing to the ring and using moves inspired by Persian wrestling techniques. He also introduced his infamous Persian clubs, daring fellow wrestlers to match his mastery in swinging these weighted implements. Throughout the mid-1970s, Vaziri worked for various regional promotions across the United States. Under the moniker The Great Hossein Arab, Vaziri clinched his inaugural title, the Canadian Tag Team Championship, alongside his partner, the Texas Outlaw. His unique look and style made him an instant attraction, and it wasn't long before he caught the eye of Vincent J. McMahon, the father of Vincent K. McMahon, and the owner of the World Wrestling Federation. Vaziri's WWF debut in 1979 marked the beginning of his ascent to wrestling superstardom. The Iranian Revolution and the subsequent hostage crisis at the US Embassy in Tehran provided the perfect backdrop for him to evolve into one of the most effective villains in professional wrestling history. His anti-American rhetoric, delivered with fiery passion in broken English, struck a chord with audiences across the nation. He became the embodiment of America's fears and anxieties about the Middle East, a role he played to perfection. His feud with Bob Backlund, which began in late 1983, would prove to be a pivotal moment, not just in his career, but in the history of professional wrestling. On December 26, 1983, at Madison Square Garden, the Iron Sheik defeated Backlund for the World Heavyweight Championship. The match itself was a masterclass in storytelling, with Backlund's manager throwing in the towel to save the All-American hero from further punishment in the Iron Sheik's dreaded camel clutch. This victory was more than just a championship win, it was a changing of the guard. Backlund, with his clean-cut image and technical wrestling style, represented the old guard of professional wrestling. The Iron Sheik, with his foreign menace gimmick and more theatrical style, was the harbinger of the new era that Vince McMahon envisioned for the WWF. The Iron Sheik's reign as champion, while short-lived, was crucial in setting the stage for the Federation's explosion in popularity. His defeat at the hands of Hulk Hogan on January 23, 1984, is often cited as the beginning of Hulkamania and the transition into the rock and wrestling era. The match itself was a spectacle. The Madison Square Garden crowd was whipped into a frenzy as Hogan, the muscle-bound hero clad in red and yellow attire, stood toe-to-toe with the dastardly Iron Sheik. As Hogan overcame Sheik's camel clutch and rallied for his comeback, the crowd reached a fever pitch. The atomic leg drop seen around the world signaled the end of the Iron Sheik's reign and the birth of a new era. Following his loss to Hogan, the Iron Sheik remained a top villain within the Federation. His partnership with Nikolai Volkoff produced one of the most heat-generating tag teams of the 1980s. Their entrance, with Volkoff singing the Soviet national anthem and the Iron Sheik waving the Iranian flag, never failed to elicit a passionate response from the crowd. The team's crowning achievement came at the inaugural WrestleMania in 1985. In front of a star-studded crowd that included celebrities like Muhammad Ali and Liberace, the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkoff defeated the US Express to capture the Tag Team Championship. Throughout 1985 and 1986, the Iron Sheik remained a fixture in the WWF's main event scene, and then on March 29, 1987, he made his appearance at WrestleMania 3 in front of over 90,000 fans at the Pontiac Silverdome, where the Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkoff faced the Killer Bees in a highly charged match. The bout took a dramatic turn when hacksaw Jim Duggan intervened, interrupting Volkoff's rendition of the Soviet national anthem with a display of American patriotism. As the match progressed, Duggan's presence at ringside proved pivotal. He struck the Iron Sheik with his signature 2x4, while the latter had Brunzell in a camel clutch. This interference led to a disqualification victory for the Iron Sheik and Volkoff, showcasing the intricate storylines and theatrical elements that defined professional wrestling of that era. But just 2 months later, in a surprising incident that blurred the lines between performance and reality, wrestling rivals Jim Duggan and the Iron Sheik were stopped by New Jersey police en route to a WWF event. With Duggan under suspicion of drunk driving, it was soon discovered that Sheik was in possession of cocaine. The arrest was a shock to fans, not just because of the drug charges, but because it exposed the behind-the-scenes reality of professional wrestling. Here were two men who were supposed to be bitter enemies on screen, caught traveling together in direct violation of kayfabe, the code of secrecy that protected the scripted nature of professional wrestling. The fallout from the arrest was swift and severe. Both men were fired from the WWF, with the Iron Sheik's dismissal marking the end of his most prominent run with the company. The incident was a stark reminder of the prevalence of drug use in the wrestling industry during this era, a problem that would claim the lives of many performers in the years to come. For the Iron Sheik, the arrest marked the beginning of a long and painful struggle with addiction. The next several years saw him bounce between various independent promotions, including sporadic returns to the WWF, although never quite recapturing the success he had enjoyed in the early 1980s. His personal life began to unravel, with his drug use taking an increasing toll on his health and relationships. Despite these setbacks, the Iron Sheik's legacy in professional wrestling was secure. His influence could be seen in the performers who followed him, particularly those who adopted foreign heel personas. The heat he generated with audiences set the standard for what an effective villain could be in the world of sports entertainment. Throughout the late 1990s and early 2000s, the Iron Sheik was still making occasional appearances in the WWF, often in comedic roles that played on nostalgia for his heyday. While these appearances were a far cry from his dominant performances of the 1980s, they served as a reminder of the impact he had made on the industry. Perhaps the most poignant of these later appearances came at WrestleMania 17, on April 1, 2001, where the Iron Sheik won the Gimmick Battle Royal, a match featuring many legendary characters from wrestling's past. His victory was celebrated by fans, serving as a bridge between wrestling's past and present, a living link to the era that had shaped the modern WWE. As the years passed, the Iron Sheik's legacy began to take on new dimensions. In the age of social media, he found a new audience, becoming something of an internet celebrity, known for his outrageous tweets and unfiltered commentary on wrestling and popular culture. This late career renaissance introduced him to a new generation of fans, many of whom had never seen him perform in his prime. His journey towards sobriety, while difficult and often tumultuous, has been an inspiration to many who have faced similar challenges. At the age of 81 years old, he passed away on June 7, 2023, at his home in Fayetteville, Georgia. The iconic wrestler's death was attributed to cardiac arrest, exacerbated by congestive heart failure and hypertension. As the final bell rings on our exploration of the Iron Sheik's career, we are left with the image of a man who, for all his flaws and struggles, remains an indomitable spirit. From the wrestling mats of Iran to the squared circle of Madison Square Garden, from the heights of championship glory to the depths of personal despair, the Iron Sheik's journey is a reminder that sometimes the most unlikely of figures can leave the most lasting impressions on our cultural landscape. In the annals of professional wrestling history, few names shine as brightly or as controversially as that of the Iron Sheik. His legacy, much like the man himself, is complex, multifaceted, and ultimately unforgettable. May he rest in peace.